everybody, and welcome to Self-Help FAQ, the YouTube channel. I'm Barb, your host. And today I want to follow up from the last video, which was on why certain people drain you. A lot of people assume the problem starts with gaslighting, lying, or cheating. But in many relationships, those aren't the first red flags. The first red flag is often secrecy, subtle, ongoing secrecy that makes you feel unsettled long before you can explain why. Today I want to talk about the secretive relationships that often set the stage for most other red flags and what they do to you psychologically along the way. Now let's get clear first on an important distinction, because this is where people get confused. Privacy and secrecy are not the same thing. Privacy sounds like, I'm not ready to talk about that yet, but I will when I am. Privacy comes with consistency over time, willingness to revisit the topic, no punishment for asking, and a general sense of emotional safety. You may not have all the information yet, but you don't feel destabilized. Secrecy sounds like, why are you even asking that? You're making something out of nothing. I don't like being questioned. And secrecy often comes with vagueness or half answers, defensiveness or irritation, emotional withdrawal, subtle reversal, where the question becomes the problem. You don't feel reassured, you feel confused. And confusion is the first warning sign. Now, there's a phrase you may have heard that people will use to justify secrecy. They say, what you don't know won't hurt you. But in relationships, what you don't know often hurts you the most because it robs you of choice. When a partner says or lives by what you don't know won't hurt you, they are quietly deciding what information you're allowed to have, what risks you're allowing to consent to, and what reality you're allowed to base your life on. And that's not protection, that's control over the narrative. So, in healthy relationships, you may not know everything, but you know what matters. Secrecy breaks this. If someone hides cheating, financial behavior, emotional attachments, double lives, ongoing flirtations, then you are making decisions on false data. This means you're investing your time, you're bonding emotionally, you're planning a future without informed consent. This always causes damage, even if the truth is found out later. When information is withheld, your nervous system senses inconsistency, your intuition flags something is off, and your mind tries to close the gap. That's when people start checking phones, watching for tone changes, replaying conversations, and monitoring behavior. Not because they're controlling, but because there's no clarity and the truth is being hidden. Secrecy creates internal chaos and then blames the injured person for trying to stabilize it. So the truth hurts, but secrecy disorients. Truth gives you agency, the ability to make decisions based on fact. It gives you choice and grounding and the ability to leave, stay, or negotiate. But secrecy, on the other hand, gives you self-doubt, confusion, erosion of self, and long-term emotional fallout or trauma bonding. That's why people often say, finding out wasn't the worst part. It was realizing how long I didn't know. Here's why secrecy is an important precursor to other red flags. You cannot have ongoing lying, cheating, gaslighting, or parallel emotional lives without secrecy already being in place. Secrecy creates a protective space where truth can be managed, reality can be edited, and accountability can be avoided. Other red flags don't appear out of nowhere. They grow inside secrecy. Now, the part that often gets overlooked is what secrecy does to you. It doesn't just hide their behavior, it changes your behavior. When you're in a secretive relationship, you start to monitor behavior, track inconsistencies, replay conversations, and question your own reactions. You may feel anxious without knowing why, emotionally tired, and less confident than you used to be. This is how grounded people slowly become hyper-vigilant, not because they're insecure, but because clarity and the truth are being hidden. And this is when snooping often happens. Now, most people don't snoop because they just want control. They snoop because they've noticed patterns, they've asked questions, and they're not getting the clarity that they need. Snooping is often the last-ditch effort to find out by asking one question. Am I imagining this, or is something real going on? This doesn't make snooping healthy, but it explains why it happens. Secrecy puts people in an impossible position. Trust without information, or seek information and feel ashamed about what you're doing. So when secrecy is finally exposed, the damage isn't just about the behavior. It totally shatters your sense of reality, your memories, and the future you thought you were building. You're not just grieving the person, you're grieving the story that was living inside. That's why people experience emotional breakdowns and why trauma bonding can form afterward. The nervous system is trying to restore coherence. And here's the key takeaway. The biggest red flag isn't always what you discover. It's this pattern: secrecy, defensiveness, confusion, self-doubt, and emotional exhaustion. The pattern alone tells you something even before you have truth. So if you've ever felt like secrecy has turned you into a person you don't recognize, the damage wasn't caused by you asking questions. It was caused by living too long without clarity or truth. So now let us consider a few questions for your journal. If you do journal, think about the following things, and I'm going to try to show you that they connect to lessons we've already had so that everything makes sense and follows one after the other. So the first question is, and this first one is if you do snoop, or if you've been tempted to snoop or are thinking about snooping on somebody. So here's the question, when I felt tempted to search for answers, what was I actually needing? Reassurance, honesty, safety, or control? So this reframes snooping as a signal, not a flaw. And we talked about signals in an earlier video. The next question you can ponder is, what would it look like to let uncertainty exist without trying to resolve it through investigation or self-betrayal? So this is subtle and mature and very aligned with the emotional regulation lesson that we had. Sometimes it's better just to let it sit for a while and do some more observation before you decide to go looking for answers. When I think back on my experiences, sometimes you don't even need to snoop. Sometimes people just leave things out that they forget to put away, or I don't know, maybe hoping you'll see it. But at any rate, I think sometimes it's better to hold back a bit and see what you can observe. It helps you keep your self-dignity. And the next question will connect to my next video, so I want you to be thinking about this. And it is, what patterns consistently make me feel anxious, hypervigilant, or unsure, even when nothing provable is happening? So this should validate your gut feelings without demanding proof. And we're going to talk more about patterns later. So in the next video, we're going to talk about red flags more directly. Not the obvious ones that everybody already knows, but patterns that repeat quietly over time. because patterns don't lie, and you don't need to catch someone to recognize them. And the tentative title of that one is Patterns Don't Lie: How to Recognize Red Flags Without Overthinking. So I hope today's video has been helpful. I hope you'll like and subscribe to continue on with this series of 12 videos about boundaries and all the subcategories of boundaries. And we'll see you next week for video 7. Thanks for stopping by and spending time. And bye for now.